Okay, hello. I'm Quincy191. I'm back with another cast. It's been over a year since I've done anything, so wanted to revisit this and see what interesting stuff's happening in the newer competitive scene. I'm doing a solo cast for this game, and then for game 2, we joined by Fruit again to have some dual caster action go on. And with that said, let's go right into the bans: Grenax, War Beast, Ophelia, and Pestilence. So two suicide heroes, the very common Pesty, who is now either first picked or often banned because he's so powerful, as well as the Ophelia jungler, presumably because they know that Hanska plays a strong Ophelia, and they, I guess, aren't really confident enough or don't want to pick it first themselves and don't want to give it to BMG. They're ex-Lions, of course. These guys have picked up new sponsorship with a Bad Monkey Gaming and leaving Lions Esports Club, so hopefully Lions will pick up a new sponsor and we can add some sponsors to the HoN competitive scene because that's always good. So first pick Engineer comes out from You Left the Party. Bit of an interesting pick. It wouldn't have been merited any comment whatsoever a couple of months ago, but with a couple of nerfs that he took and some less dual mid strategies nowadays, Engie's not really been a huge pick, especially first pick recently. His abilities are somewhat difficult to land without a setup stun or a slow or something like that, so he's typically run in that dual situation where somebody else can set him up, and with fewer and fewer teams choosing to run a dual mid instead of suiciding mid or something like that, uh, he hasn't really been that effective, and then of course the nerfs were a big problem. Uh, Hanskin's going to follow that with a Keeper of the Forest first pick. Great pick. Of course, his suicide potential was a bit uh, shot with the recent patch, reducing his starting armor, so he doesn't suicide nearly as well anymore, but he does do it as still a decent job at it. And of course, he is being run more as a jungler lately. He's a very passive jungler because he can't do much ganking until level 6, but with an Entmoot max instead of Nature's Veil, he actually can jungle just as fast, or even in some cases faster than Tempest, who is usually considered the gold standard when it comes to jungle farm. Uh, YLTP will follow up with Wretched Hag, who I like much better. I think Hag is probably one of the best heroes in the competitive scene right now because she can really do anything. She can be run as a mid, as an initiator, as a suicide, although we don't see that quite as much anymore, or as a short lane carry, and that's a little bit more of what we've been seeing. With Wretched Hag, she farms really fast, especially with that Grimoire, and she provides plenty of burst damage, some chase with Haunt, and a lot of AoE with Sona Scream and Bat Blast, so that's very well done there. BMG is going to follow it up with Bubbles, so really between those two picks and the Rhapsody, of course, which should be run as a support, they haven't telegraphed too much. This Bubbles could theoretically be run in all three lanes, although we really don't see him as a short laner too much. Usually that's a little more reserved for a hard carry role, or even a babysit for an initiator like Pestilence. So I expect that to be in the mid or suicide lane, but of course it's always possible to run as a short lane because, hey, you can do anything. So between Keeper and Bubbles, you actually have a bit of question marks over here for YLTP because they could see either of those heroes in the suicide, they could see Bubbles in the mid, they could see Keeper in the jungle, and Rhapsody, of course, can play as support. Slither, also actually a bit of a versatile hero. You can run him as a support. I'm not a huge fan of that. I do like him a little more as a carry because he provides so much damage with no items, so he can really tank up and not die but still do a lot of damage, or you can grab offensive items on him and you can do a real large amount of damage. That's of course assuming that you hit those poison sprays, which can often be very difficult to land. So I expect we're going to see that either in a support role or as a short laner. One of those two. Going into the bans, we see of course Hanskin's banning out Tempest, Parasite, taking all the junglers away so that the YLTP cannot run a jungler. So I assume that Slither's going to be run in a support role. It's possible he won't. It's possible they're going to pick up a second support here, but I would expect that. Meanwhile, YLTP is going to ban out Gauntlet, Moon Queen, and Gemini, so taking a couple of hard carries away from Fuzi. Very common hard carries that he has played very well in the past, as well as Super KG's Gauntlet playing a hook hero. But of course still got Prisoner and Devourer left, so we could see a Super KG hook hero anyway. The Lions will be looking to pick up one of those initiators, probably for mid, to put in Super KGE's hands. On YLTP side, I would imagine they're going to pick up a second support because all the junglers are banned out. And after that, they could do pretty much anything because of the versatility of Hag. They could pick up a Suicide, they could pick up an Initiator, or they could pick up a short lane Farmer. So I expect here we're going to see a farming hero because they've already got one support and they really don't expect BMG to pick up another support. So they've basically got their pick of litter when it comes to second support, assuming of course the Slither is not played as a support, and if he is, then they might want to pick up their they're going to want to pick up their mid hero here because they do like, assuming that they don't run the Hag, in the middle lane because he is not quite as powerful there. I do prefer him a little bit in the short lane role or in the Suicide. But certainly taking a lot of time here for a YLTP. They're down to 10 seconds, and they better make us pick very soon. And it's the Prisoner, so that's going to be presumably run middle because, of course, it's Prisoner, and with Engineer, actually it's a pretty strong pairing. Or Slither for that matter, but I think I prefer the Slither or the Prisoner NG combo a little bit better between Shackle and Hook and Keg and Turret. There's quite a lot of lockdown there, so you can really take some kill chances there and turn them into actual kills. Hanskin's going to reply here with, presumably we're still looking for Fuzi's hero and Joseph Fan's hero or Super KGE's hero, depending on whether the Bubbles is a short laner or a mid laner. I expect we'll see Fuzi's first because there aren't that many carries left on the board, and actually no, well, we could see Fuzi's because if Slither gets run as a support, then YLTP will still be looking for a carry, so actually I prefer Fuzi's here a little bit here, especially because they can pick up another Initiator because obviously YLTP won't be going for one, so the only place they have to compete for them for a hero here is on the carry role, theoretically, of course. So hopefully we can do something within the next 10 seconds. Han's going to make a decision a little faster, please, if you would, because I've now run out of things to say. And Midas. So that's not going to be Fuzi's hero. No way. That could be either Super KGE or Jonathan Fan. I presume that between the two of them, one will take Bubbles and one will take Midas. Really, both of those guys have some pretty strong burst damage, and they've got escape mechanisms, so they could be run in either role. I think as a Suicide hero I might actually prefer Midas a little bit because his escape mechanism is different from either of his harass abilities, so he can throw out both the Golden Salvo and the Lion's Pride and still have the teleport available, whereas Bubbles can't do that. And then the Artillery final pick for YLTP, this is presumably going to be a farmer. I would prefer to see him run in a jungle role, although he doesn't do that quite as well anymore. But I guess this is going to be a farming artillery, which is new and interesting and great, but I don't have a ton of affinity for this YLTP team, pretty much because they've got one stun and it's not easy to land, assuming you don't count Prisoner's ultimate as a really reliable stun because it's not off cooldown enough. In the meantime, though, of course, that's going to be Fuzi's hero on that TDL, so we'll see where Midas and Super Bubbles end up, and Bubbles goes to Super KGE, so he'll be playing the mid role, Fuzi's in the short lane, presumably with a Babysit Rhapsody, Keeper in the jungle, and Joseph Finn on the Suicide. On YLTP side, we could either see the dual lanes, mid and bot with a Suicide Hag, we could see a tri-lane theoretically with the Prisoner Slither and NG, or the Artillery Slither and NG. Really, they have quite a few laning options here. The problem I have really is that I don't feel like any of their laning options are that good. The only thing that's going to have a significant amount of kill potential is the tri-lane with Prisoner and NG and Slither, but even that, you've only got the one NG stun, and he pretty much needs to land Shackle, or he could probably get the Keg off the hook, but there's not that much burst damage, especially because Slither has none. He's purely poison damage, which is a dot. So if they hit Fuzi, who has an escape mechanism with the charging strikes, and he is not shackled, he'll be able to get away. If he is shackled, he should be able to tank for long enough to get away. And then he'll presumably have a Rhapsody helping him out a little bit. If Rhapsody gets caught, she's dead, assuming they land all their spells, of course. And it is going to be this tri-lane top, it looks like, as artillery is solo bottom and Hag is solo mid. And I don't like I don't like this artillery bottom because he's going to get beat by this Midas. Midas with his new ultimate level 4 is going to do a ton of burst damage to artillery. Artillery has no escape mechanism, he has no healing mechanism, he's got more or less nothing that is going to make him a real threat to this Midas, and Midas of course has the elemental warp. He can always just run away if things get particularly dicey. So Midas here kind of silly versus, or sorry, artillery here kind of silly versus Midas. And maybe they think something else is going to happen, but I don't know what. Because if this is a suicide bubbles, then he would probably have less kill potential in the artillery, but it's not like Art could kill him, and so that'd be a relatively even lane. And then if it were a dual lane here, then artillery would get boxed up by Rhapsody. So I don't like the solo short Art. I think they should have run a dual lane here, because artillery does need a babysitter. Heroes like this without an escape mechanism, without a healing mechanism, can really get crapped on by a hero that has as much burst damage as Midas does. I think that's what's going to happen here. But I expect most of the action to happen up here in this tri-lane, as we see NG, Slither, and Prisoner up top. And presumably Prisoner will get some pretty strong farm up here because he should have pretty much just free farm. Middle lane, Bubbles versus Hag. I do expect Bubbles to win this, not just because it's super KGE, but because Bubbles is a little bit better harass potential, but that's Shell Surf. Hag's Haunt's just going to get take covered, and then his Sonar Scream, of course, doesn't have enough range really to do too much. And we can already see that Bubbles is laying down the Herc. Up top, Fuzi's pretty much just staying away from the creep wave and deciding, yeah, I don't want to do much here. When it gets under this tower, of course, he's going to be able to CS, and then, of course, with the Hatchet and the Taint Soul, he's also going to be able to CS. But I don't think they're going to have too easy a time taking him out, and they're not going to completely stop his farm. So, you know, with a train like this, you really have to get kills, because the supports are going to be under-leveled and massively under-farmed. Prisoner is going to be... his farm should be very good, actually. We see them at 315 gold per minute or so right now. So he's going to out-farm people, but without the without the hero kills, both this Engineer and the Slither are going to sit at no health whatsoever. So Fuzi's dug himself a little hole in the trees where he can leech experience, and snipe CS with Taint Soul and the Hatchet. We see Rhapsody pulling already, just to get them some lane control back. As we see, the lane is going to be pushed out a little bit here, but Seal Kid's basically going to stay in the jungle and hang out. And then, oh, bottom we got Midas going on artillery, and is he going to die? Nope, there's a health pot tick, and that's going to be just enough to save him as Midas runs away. Artillery throws out the slow, but that's not going to be enough. Up top, they're stealing the pull here, which of course is a very good thing to be doing, especially because it helps box Seal Kid out a little bit more to prevent him from getting experience. But once again, they're not shutting Fuzi down, really. You know, Fuzi's at 217 gold per minute, which isn't great. You look at the experience per minute charge, he's up there at 343 up there at the top with Bubbles. So he's going to get levels really fast. And Seal Kid's going to need some too, but that's a bit of a problem. As you see, Artillery is actually running all the way back to the base to heal. So they have an upgraded Courier, and he's got 583 gold. So instead of flying himself out some regen, he's just going to go all the way back to base, while NG goes bottom and takes the farm. And NG's not going to be in too much danger here because Midas is low on mana and health, but really, is that going to be enough to do much? I kind of doubt it, so it's not going to happen. Here's where you see Staccato Sun's coming up on Prisoner, and that's not going to amount to anything. As bottom lane, we got Midas throwing out the Golden Salvo, and then there's the Elemental Warp, LRM from NG's, or from Artillery's going to be there. Turret's going to miss, Keg's going to get dodged, and there's nothing there. And really, Midas is going to get a little close to death here, and if he had the LRM, he'd be dead. And up top lane, we got a Shackle going on to Rhapsody, and there's some Staccato Stuns. As, let's see, Slither Sprite hits 2, Hook pulls in Rhapsody, and it's going to hurt him, but Charging Strikes takes out Prisoner, and Seal Kid dies in return. It's obviously a great trade for BMG because their carry gets the other team's farmer, and they lose their support, but they don't lose the Bloodlust, and they get exactly what they wanted. So that's pretty much a perfect trade for them. On bottom, meanwhile, we got some initiation perhaps on NG. He's going to throw out the Golden Salvo and the Elemental Warp, and that's probably a bad idea. Is he going to kill NG? He's not, as Jonas McFan goes down. So extremely aggressive play there from Jonas McFan. He nearly had the NG kill, but pays for it with his life. Probably not the kind of thing you want to be doing, because basically as a suicide, your job is die as little as possible. And I think even if he got that kill, he wasn't going to live, especially with the port coming in from Hag. But Artillery should have been able to take him out no matter what. Over on the right here, we've got Rhapsody getting shackled and Slither sprayed, and he's just going to die here. And there's the Rhapsody kill. Middle, actually Hag's putting quite a bit of hurt here on Bubbles, but Bubbles has the bottle and is level 6, so he could be doing some interesting stuff. Meanwhile, on top, they've got Fuzi trapped in, but he's going to Charging Strikes away and Runaway Layer, and it's really unlikely they're going to be able to kill him as Rhapsody ports back in. Keeper shows up here. He's got a root, level 3, prisoner. Kill the prisoner. No, we're not going to decide to do that. Okay. Being charitable, I guess, a little bit. As prisoner is now going to hang out, and they're going to compete for the 6-minute rune. But of course, it's a level 3 prisoner and a level 6 keeper who still has a root. And it is very confusing. And here comes Bubbles. There's the root. There's prisoner. Prisoner gets the mixes the hooks actually, and Bubbles gets the kill. So there's a bottle regen on Bubbles. So ha 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 ha. Used up all my mana and health, and now I have a regen rune, so I'll be totally fine. Meanwhile, on bottom, we've got Artillery coming back to the lane to contest it so Midas doesn't get complete free farm. So despite that early advantage that Midas had, actually, he does have a slight experience drop, and now he's going to go on Artillery and then back up. So Artillery is slightly ahead of experience per minute, but not by too much. And when that kind of thing is happening, really, I think we can say the Suicide is sort of winning this lane here, because experience per minute says they're not really above, and he's not too far off on gold per minute either. And really, this is a lane that Artillery needs to be dominating a lot harder than he is. Really, the gold per minute chart shows you Lions is substantially ahead. They've got 3 heroes that are out farming everybody on their opposing team, and then Midas isn't too far behind. Really, Legion's only got 2 heroes about 200 gold per minute. Midas is going to dive again and get hit by the Artillery ult, the LRM. Here comes Engineer. The Golden Salvo and Lion's Pride stun is not enough to take him out, and they'll get the kill up there. Meanwhile, we're going to take out Slither here with Fuzi and Rhapsody. So they lose their Suicide, and they get a support Slither. So it's not a great trade, really, but Fuzi got a kill, so, and Engineer got the kill on the Legion team, so as far as kill distribution goes, that actually significantly favored the Hellborn team. Meanwhile, we've got setup here going on. Nope, we were going to set up on Keeper, and Hag was coming in, but decided to back off. Let's run all the way bottom, where it looks like Bubbles is going to pick off this Artillery. Yep. And down goes Artillery once more to 250 gold per minute, which is really not a great place to be for a short lane farmer. It sort of shows you why he needs to babysit. So Foos is going to take a spray here and a shackle. There it is. And then he's going to miss the hook, which is going to prevent him from getting the kill, because then the kick doesn't land either. Meanwhile, Rhapsody and Keeper come in, and Keeper ultimate hits 3. Engineer is going to die. And Rhapsody is interested in taking down Slither, but he takes the Bat Blast and the Sonar Scream, and then his nature spells those, so he should be okay. Slither Spray takes to Keeper, but Keeper's going to be okay because he has a nature spell. Meanwhile, Rhapsody with a DD rune is going to take down Slither, but he's now dead as the Shackle and the LRM go off. But decent trade for Hellborn. They did pick off 2 heroes. They got both the NG and the Slither, and they lost Seal Kid and the Rhapsody. At this point, whether they need to be trading Seal Kid for Slither, probably not. But in the end, it was a 2-for-1, so things came out fairly well, and they did get a lot of ultimates out of the Legion team, particularly the Bat Blast. So actually, that was the only ultimate they got out of the Legion team, because they only have 2 ultimates right now. This is just happily farming away bottom. Same thing with artillery in middle, and Fuzi on top. So they do sort of need to address this Midas. He's only at 230 gold per minute, which isn't the greatest, but he's got free farm, free experience. He's sitting pretty on experience per minute chart, right up there with everybody on the Legion team. 4th on his own team, of course, because he hasn't been active in too much. But dying actually 0-2-0, so that's not great. But it looks like top, we've got the Tri-Lane has reformed up here, and funnily enough, actually Prisoner is the lowest level of all of them, at level 4. Both NG and Slither level 5, and their Prisoner hits 5 just now. So he needs to land a hook. But even if he does, level 8 Dark Lady with 364 gold per minute may not care. May actually just be able to walk out of anything that happens. On bottom, we've got Midas and Bubbles here with Artillery and Hag. I don't think that they know that Bubbles is here, and I think he's going to try to keep it that way, see if they can get a kill on Art or Hag or both. With Kelpfield, I suspect they'll be able to get at least Artillery, possibly Hag, just a little more dangerous. But now that we've got Keeper here too, and there's a Kelpfield going up our Artillery, and Artillery is completely dead here. Hag is going to walk in with a Sonar Scream, and then eat the Keeper's root, and then die as well. Although Keeper is going to get hooked in. Nice hook there from Majestics on that Keeper, and that Prisoner, and that's going to be the death of Keeper. But that's pretty much exactly... Lions will take that, or BMG will take that trade all day long, considering they took down the 2 farmers, really, 2 of the better farmers on YLTP and lost just the Keeper. So their Spy's going to miss there, and Prisoner's in trouble, and there he goes. Top tower is being heavily pressured with Rhapsody and Dark Lady, and that's definitely going to be a tower kill up here. Bottom lane, once again, they don't really seem keen on leaving this. They're keeping Slither and Engineer boxed in. And really, Super KGE could probably dive them here. Both of them adding 388 health on Slither. Between the Midas and the Slither and oh, there's a Rhapsody ult going up there, helping out Dark Lady, but that's not going to be enough to save Seal Kid on that Rhapsody. We saw the bubble support come in, and he's going to throw out a Shell Surf there. Won't connect on Artillery, so that's too bad. But bottom lane, meanwhile, we see Turret coming out trying to catch Midas, but of course he's got Elemental Warp, and that's going to prevent him from being in any real danger. Keeper minions here hanging out with Keeper. And LRM is going to come up on Bubbles. Sonar Scream. Haunt is actually going to hit Bubbles, but he's going to Shell Surf and Kelpfield up to the cliff there where they can't really hit him, and then the LRM is going to get cancelled. Take covers there, and down goes Super KGE. In the meantime, now Fuzi's a little trouble. Prisoner Ultimate goes off, and Rhapsody's going to take it, but the Dance Floor goes down. That basically prevents Fuzi from taking any damage at all. Staccato stuns onto Prisoner. Is he able to get the support out? Yes, he will. Slither runs in with the spray and the ultimate, which is hilarious, but Staccato stuns are going to come out on her, and now she's dead.
It's a 3-way!
So Slither ultimate, if you couldn't tell by her yelling, Slither ultimate comes out and does nothing pretty much, as Slither dies for really no reason, considering Prisoner was gone with no ports, and Slither basically just fed himself to the other team. For no return. Usually not a great thing. Hanska, meanwhile, is jungling the enemy jungle, because even without wards, because who cares at this point? He's got 340 gold per minute, he's got Nature's Veil. Even if they bring Dust, he's got a root, so this is a little sketchy, but he probably wouldn't die unless they brought 4 or 5. He is pretty tanky with 1,347 total health, plenty of armor, and of course some pretty solid escape mechanisms. He's going to come in behind middle, and I would have to imagine Slither saw him there. Maybe not. Sorry, meanwhile, Fuzi takes out Artillery, so that's just great. Your short lane farmer and highest farmer in the game is going to get taken out by Fuzi. That's sad times. Prisoner Hook missed in the middle, and meanwhile, bottom tower is going to go down. as the Legion team has 4 heroes here and no real plan. They don't think they want to push, they can't kill these bubbles, so they're just going to hang out next to each other because splitting up tends to result in them dying a hell of a lot. Bottom, however, here we see Engineer. He's going to try to stop the push. I assume Turret's going to come out here in a second. Maybe not. Midas is getting a little froggy, as Prisoner could hook. There it is, and there's the Shackle. It's going to nail him up the Warp and the Prisoner ultimate, and the Sonar Scream is... Actually, he's not going to die. Oh my god, he's got... Okay, there he finally goes down. And Bubbles is in massive amounts of trouble, too. He's dead. Keeper's coming in way too late. So that's actually a pretty good series of events there for YLTP. Something they really need to get a couple of picks on 2 heroes that were farming reasonably well, 325 gold per minute for Jonas and Fan and 372 GPM for Super KGE. And it took a death on their Hag, but 174, she can deal with that. On the other hand, they lose mid tower. They're going to get heavy pressure here on top. They're probably going to lose this tower too, especially as the second creep wave comes in, and Fuzi's actually going to choose to... Nope. Yes, back up. As the Taint Soul comes out for the last creep kill, but Engineer's here to defend it with a turret, and Fuzi probably could have kept pushing that, but really didn't feel like it was worth the risk. Especially with the position that they're in, there's no reason to do anything like that. Jonas and Fan, there's no reason to take any massive risks here, so... Okay, just so you know. So he'll clean up the creep wave with his skill combo, and then run into the river, and then run back out of the river, as Engineer ports to the base, and Wretched Hag comes top trying to farm this wave that Fuzi left. Nice and pushed up, so I'm just going to take 3 creep kills right there. Hanskin continues to farm the enemy jungle because that's pretty hilarious. Once again, he's got no vision here. Like, he's got a rev ward here, so he knows that there's no wards in this area, but, you know, for all he knows, there could be wards other places, and he probably just doesn't care, because... Really, why would he? It's not like they can kill him. Meanwhile, we got 4 middle, looks like 5, so they're coming up, and it looks like we might actually have a tower push. Super KG is setting up there on Bubbles to try to get something off. And we're going to see a Kelfield here in a second. Dancepro goes down. There's a Kelfield on it too. Shellstrift goes off, and he's not going to do much. Prisoner ultimate goes out and hits nothing pretty much. NG ultimate goes out and hits nothing, and he dies, so Slither... Engineer and Hag and Artillery die, and then we find a pick off onto Prisoner as well, so that's a 4 for nothing. Good initiation there by Super KGE as the Kelpfield goes off, and with an 18k gold lead and a 22k experience lead, Hellborn is going to take game 1 of the series between BMG and YLTP. Pretty much a stomp. There's very little else to say about that game. Over 350 gold on 4 heroes on Hellborn, and now they're dying to neutral creeps, which is pretty funny. And they're dying to Kongor, which is pretty funny. But just some interesting lane decisions coming out from BMG, from YLTP, and really, I don't like this artillery pick, and I don't like the decision to put him solo short, but, you know, we'll see if they can figure out some more interesting things to do in Game 2 that might actually work, because certainly this was an interesting strategy, but I think it was pretty flawed from the start. The 2 support versus the jungler, that rarely works well. And then on top of that, I think their lanes got pretty well predicted and beaten by by Hanskin and the boys over at BMG in terms of just picking out, you know, which heroes to send to which lanes, because it was pretty clear that they were losing essentially all 3 lanes. Artillery had decent farm on bottom, but you'd like to see him shut down a Midas a little bit more than he did. So we're going to be moving on to game 2, and thanks for joining me for this one.